I mean, it feels so good to be back again. And last week, we started a conversation on cervical cancer, and my guest, Dr. Neka Osigwe, talked about quite a number of things. And this week, as I promised last week, we'll continue definitely from that part. And it really interests you to know that cervical cancer, even though she said it's an STI, it's also something that you can get even though you're not, sexual. There's no act of sexual intercourse in it. That she will explain more later on, but this is just a scratch on the surface. My name is Doris Mayum Shishe, and this is Gyna Plus, a program that talks about health issues that affect women and girls in the society. And this show comes up every Wednesday at 6 p.m. And there's always a repeat broadcast on Saturday at 8 p.m. We'll take a short break, and right after that, you'll meet Dr. Neka Osigwe again. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching Ghana Plus right here on Afi Television. This is where you get all of the health information that affects women and girls in the society. And the goal at the end of the day is to help you live healthier and better lives. So you are in the right place and at the right time. My name is Doris Mayushishe, and of course, I still have in the studio Dr. Neka Osigwe. She is a specialist in obstetrics and gynecology at the Federal Teaching Hospital, Owerri. Dr. Neka, not like you left. We're back like you never left, by the way. Welcome again.
Thank you.
Yes, let's just quickly continue from where we stopped last
Okay,
week.
that's fine.
We talked about cervical cancer, the risk factors, we talked about the causes, we talked about when to visit a doctor. I don't want to take you back there, but just give us a brief on the risk factors again, and
Okay.
then what symptoms one should look for very briefly before we proceed to talking about the vaccines holistically.
Okay, so the risk factors, like I earlier said last week, include being a black, coming from a low socio-economic area of status, then early sexual debut, which we also call early coitus, then multiple pregnancies, multiple sexual intercourse partners, then high-risk meal, even tobacco smoking, even the use of what we call the combined hormonal contraception. They are part of the risk factors. Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
I like the fact that I'm hearing combined hormonal contraception.
Yes, even early menarche and
Okay,
late
let's expand a
later.
bit on that before we even go on with symptoms to look at for. When you
Okay.
said combined hormonal,
Contraceptives.
please
Yeah.
can you shed more light on that?
Okay. Well, it's these risk factors. They say when you use the combined hormonal contraceptive, that it also has effects on the HPV infection itself. It tends to alter.
Let me quickly interrupt there.
Okay.
When you say combined, means two different kinds of contraceptives that are meant to affect influence with hormone. Is that what
Okay,
it
yes.
means?
When we talk about the combined hormonal contraceptive, like the combined oral contraceptives, where we have two hormones
Oh, okay.
as pills that we
Oh.
take. Yeah. Combining estrogen and progesterone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There are two hormones that are seen in the female. So you take it to prevent you from coming down with, prevent you from taking it, from being pregnant. So that's the combined oral
That's a risk
contraceptives.
factor too.
Yes, it's a risk
Wow.
factor. So it's been shown that it alters the HPV, infection. So making it persist and eventually progressing.
Oh.
Yeah.
But how about nutrition, diet?
Well,
certain meals.
yeah, it's not been too clear on that. People have not been cleared on that, how it affects it, because people are talking about fats and stuff like that. But that mechanism is not yet cleared, So that's why it's not something we categorically say this is it or it can be explained.
Okay, so if you missed out on the full episode last week, you can head on straight to Afri TV Lifestyle and Culture. That's our YouTube channel, and you will have all of the information you need. That's what Dr. Nega talked about last week. But for this week, we will progress to the impacts on women's health. Is there any way someone I mean, you see, when it comes to women issues like this, sometimes it just feels like, okay, there should be some sort of miracle elsewhere, but I know health doesn't work that way. But is there a way women who probably have survived this can actually get pregnant again? Is there a way they can still conceive and have babies? Is there a possibility?
Okay, well, when you're talking about the impact, it's both, in fact, it's economically, physically, financially draining, And it's also a worrisome thing, and it's challenging, even both to the gynecologist, to the person, involved, I mean our clients, and to the society at large. When you're talking about someone that has had this cervical cancer, depending on the stage, because in some cases where we have to remove both the womb and the cervix entirely, talking about taking in, it could be possible with maybe IVF.
Oh, okay.
Do you understand? But whereby there are also some cases where we can just remove only the cervix and the womb will be intact, right? So in this case, that lady still poses more challenges because there's something we call cervical insufficiency and stuff. So the pregnancy is also at risk of having preterm birth, preterm labor, and stuff like that. So it's not an easy thing. Like I said, it's actually challenging for both parties. So anything that concerns cancer is not just good news anyway. Yeah.
It sounds as
Yeah,
though.
and you were talking about survivor. Yeah, some people survive.
Okay.
Depending on the stage, like I said.
That
Yeah.
if it presents early, I know you
Yeah,
talked about
If you
prevention
present earlier, yeah, and you have the proper treatment,
Okay.
people survive.
When we talk about this thing, it looks like it's just a woman's problem.
Yeah.
I know HPV. You said it's an STI, that's sexually
Yeah.
transmitted infection, meaning that the man is involved.
Yeah.
So
Men are
men too
involved. And I
get
told you about the
yes,
HPV infection. That
yes.
it's not just about causing cervical cancer, it also causes anorectal cancer,
Oh, okay.
penile cancer, scrotal cancer. So it's not just a female thing. And that's why the HPV vaccine is recommended for both boys and girls.
Now let's talk about the vaccines.
Okay.
Because I know sometime last year, that's in 2023,
Yeah.
there was a massive campaign for girls between 9 to 14,
Yeah.
to get vaccinated. And there were lots of controversies around it.
Okay.
I know stories. I mean, it wasn't the news. I was on top of that issue because, I mean, I advocate for women.
Yeah.
And a lot of mothers in my neighborhood were saying, no, that was a strategy to make the women barren.
Yes.
So there's no way they will allow their girls take it. So with you telling me all of these things today on how it can safeguard the girls, let's talk about the importance of vaccine first of all before we even think of talking about some of the myths and then the controversies around it.
Yeah. So just like every other vaccine, so why do we vaccinate this people or this group of people? It's for you not to come down with it as much as possible, or if at all you come down with it, let it be minimal, right? So that is the essence of vaccine in lay terms. So HPV vaccine, for me, has come to stay. I was actually at the center of this phase 2 rollout at Imo State. So HPV vaccine will try as much as possible to curb this menace. Now, we have different types of vaccine. Yes, we have the bivalent. So the bivalent vaccine takes care of just the HPV 16 and 18. Oh, it will interest you to know that HPV serotypes are over 150 types. Yes. So we have specific ones that causes the cancer itself. So we have like serotypes 16, 18, 31, 33, 35.
Really technical. When we hear this term, I'm like, okay, so now what's she talking about?
Okay.
So in a layman's term, is there a way we can simplify this?
Let me try. When you talk about viruses, they have strains. So these are different strains. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the 16 and 18, they're implicated in cervical cancer, right? But for the quadrivalent, we have 6, 11, 16, and 18. So 6 and 11 are implicated in the genital warts. So these are like growths that you see in your private area. Do you understand? That are worrisome. So that is why it covers for the quadrivalent vaccine. Then we also have the nanovalent vaccine. That one is expensive. In the US, it's about $286. So it's not licensed.
Per dose?
Per dose.
Shot,
Per shots, yes. So it's not licensed in Nigeria yet. Of course, you know what happens in Nigeria, $286.
That's a lot of money.
Yes.
Now, so for the ones young girls between 9 and 14 took last year.
Yes, it was just
that was just one shot.
Yeah, it's one shot. So usually, if you're less than 15, we advocate, or the WHO recommended 2 shots are okay, using whether the bivalent or the quadrivalent vaccine, right? But because of shortage of vaccine and all that, this rollout was specifically for girls. Remember that the boys can also be vaccinated, because just like you said, it takes 2 to tango. So
they should both be, right?
Yes, but because of the shortage of the vaccine, that is why we're only vaccinating the girls. And 1 shot has been shown to be as good as, not really 100% as good as 2 shots, but really, really good. So that is why they are receiving only 1 shot between 9 and 14. And by next year, we'll start giving only 9 years.
Okay, now you said 1 shot can be good. That's for, this has to be for girls who
they
are
want
not being exposed to any form of sexual intercourse or activity.
Yes, that is why we're trying to catch them young, 9 to 14. But it also interests you, even people that have started having that sexual debut between that 9 to 14, they still receive the vaccine. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's still effective.
It's still effective.
Okay, so I know that a lot of women, because this is not just about younger girls, this is a program that talks about health issues for every woman, old and young.
Yes.
And there's been massive campaign for, cancer screening, cervical cancer screening specifically. And for instance, Medical Women Association Ogun State chapter, and there were times where they would do they'll call for free screenings, pap smear, and all of that.
Yes.
And you see women would trip in there and then out. So when all of this happens, for these categories of women, what kind of vaccines are they supposed to take?
Okay.
For instance, let me quickly add before, so it doesn't skip my mind. So if, for instance, it turns out negative, earlier on in our last week episode, you talked about the fact that after 3 years you have to do another screening.
Yes.
So if, for instance, I go for a pap smear and it's negative, and I'm going to take the vaccine, am I supposed to go back for another screening?
Okay. Now, well, it's a two-way question.
Okay.
Let me just talk about the vaccine. We talked about the 9 to 14. That is what we practice here. But in the US, we have the catch-up route, 9 to 26. It was moved to 9 to 26. And currently, they're talking about up to 45 years. Yes. So, for instance, you go for your testing and it's negative. Yes, you can still receive the vaccine, so far as that you're still within this age range. But the problem in Nigeria is that for that, you can't receive it free of charge. You have to go to a private facility or where they offer those vaccines and pay out of pocket to receive it.
And that's quite pricey, I guess.
Yes, it's pricey. Cervarix is expensive.
Like what's the range? Company. Like if you want an estimate, so someone might want to budget. So
it all depends.
It all depends. Like up to 100,000 or more.
It could be up to that. It depends.
This economy.
Yes. Like as at last 2 years, you could get a shot for like between 20 to 25, 20 to 30,000, depending. But you know what happens now.
Yeah.
So I can't really tell you that this is what it is. Yeah.
Okay, so now back to the other question. So you talked about the last edition. You mentioned the fact that if you have been screened, for instance, and it turns out negative, for the pap smear, you should go back after 3 years.
Yes.
So does it also apply to women who've already taken the vaccine?
Yes.
So if
that you have received the vaccine doesn't mean that you should stop screening.
No, so even if you're taking all 3 shots?
I told you that they have more than 150 strains. The HPV. So that is why you have to still continue, the screening. And I also told you about the WHO global strategy about the 90-70-90. So what it means is that as much as possible before 2030, 90% of these young girls must have received the HPV vaccine, while for 70% of women must have been screened first, at least at age 35 and then another age 45. Then 90% of women should be treated, the ones that have precancerous lesions and cancer lesions. So it's a way of trying as much as possible to eliminate it.
Okay, so for, I like the fact that we are going really practical with this. For young men, you mentioned the fact that in the US, boys also get vaccinated.
Yes,
but the reverse is the case because of shortage of vaccine.
Yeah.
Now, while that is on one side, it's still a problem to us Nigerians and a larger problem to the women. Because, because it takes two to tango, remember. So for the men, even though this attention is more women, but the truth is we can't exclude the men when we're talking about women. So in this case now, it's very important. Is there some sort of measure that will help men prevent them from, getting down with the virus so it doesn't even affect the women?
Yes, and, infect the women. Well, we're just limited to use of barrier method, which is the condom for the men. Because as we can see, the vaccines can go around. And for the females, be it their sisters, their children, female girls, they should go as much as possible to receive this vaccine. And the news we're getting is because of this shortage of vaccine as well. We're giving this vaccine free between 9 to 14 for the females. From next year, they're just giving it specifically to girls aged 9, and that's it. So as much as possible this year, they should go get it. They should also read about the Rwanda story and the HPV vaccine and see how it has, as much as possible, reduced cervical cancer to the barest minimum in Rwanda. So it's good news.
No.
And it's the gospel that we should preach.
Yes, of course, I like this kind of gospel, right? And the fact that you said there will be a ruler next year again. Now, remember, the issues around the last year one wasn't totally cleared. I know the government at different quarters tried to, you know.
Because there were lots of myths and misconceptions.
And it's still on as we speak.
I agree with you.
So I'd like you to use this medium to talk about the importance of these vaccines and what it does generally to younger people and maybe bigger women who want to, you know, avail themselves of some of these shots later in life.
Yeah. The good news is that most of these myths and misconceptions are not right at all. Yeah, because even when I was at the helm of affairs during the rollout, I was telling them that I've received the vaccine. They were like, when did you receive it? Was it before you had children or after you had children? So, you know, all these things are really funny because, you know, one of the myths is that it causes infertility and stuff like that. But it's not true. So I keep telling them, if they think that it's true, why do you think people do this? Why do you think whites bring this vaccine down to us? You know, and if you hear or you've read about the history of vaccination generally, you see that it has been a problem in the blacks, especially in Nigeria.
I remember COVID.
Yeah. COVID is even it's just near here. If you talk about polio and stuff like that, and you see it affected our children. It affected people generally. So as much as possible, if they can understand that it's new to us, it's difficult for us to accept it. In fact, where I went to give this vaccine, they were telling me that I should give them money to eat, and I'm talking about vaccination, you know. And I tell them, yes, I understand that things are hard, but this is something that is free that we need to receive now, because in the nearest future, it's going to affect our girls, it's going to affect our boys, it's going to affect the nation as a whole. Remember, I told you it's financially draining. So as much as possible, we can prevent it. Let's go ahead.
Now, well, thank you so much, Dr. Because I'm really enjoying this conversation because it's indeed an eye-opener. And I know that any woman or any mother or any father, young girl who's watching right now, definitely learning a lot. You probably would have heard so much about the HPV vaccine. You probably would have heard a lot about cervical cancer. You're like, God forbid. This is no God forbid incident or no God forbid case. Just do the right thing and save yourself the stress. So at this point, we'll take a short break. And right after that, we'll talk about more and some of the misconceptions and, of course, how you can learn better. Please stay tuned. Thank you for staying tuned. You are still watching Gyneplus right here on Afro Television, and by this time you probably would have jotted down quite a lot because there's been so much on today's episode, right? And Dr. Nneka Osigwe is still here. She's going to talk to us more about a few more things that would help you live healthier lives and, if possible, you know, prevent yourself from coming down with cervical cancer. So, Dr. Nneka, we've talked about everything. From last week, we started with the preamble to now we're talking about vaccines and why it's important. But then again, the misconceptions are things that around HPV virus now. I read up one that says that if you are under 30 years, that the HPV virus will clear up once you're 30.
Oh, well, it's not cast in stone, you know. That conception is not cast in stone. Just like I told you, you know, there are outcomes of this HPV infection, right? So some will clear up, that's the regression. Some will persist, and some will progress onto pre-cancerous lesion and cancerous lesion. So it's not cast in stone that it's
so if you're below 30, you've already heard this.
And that's why I told you that I had a patient that died of cervical cancer at the age of 35. So you can imagine. Yeah.
See? These things are happening. So another one that said people who get down with HPV virus are those women who are promiscuous.
Well. It's really funny because, you know, I talked about the risk factors, and that's why I actually emphasized on the high-risk male, because you may not have multiple sexual partners. Like when I was a house officer then at Nnamdi Azikiwe University Teaching Hospital, I had a patient who came down with cervical cancer, and she kept on saying that she was a virgin before she got married. But the man obviously was a high-risk male, because when we took history from the man, you know, we understood that he had a lot of people in his life, even while he was still married. So that you're promiscuous. Funny enough, you may be promiscuous and you may not even come down.
Never.
You may not even come down with
So
a HPV infection. So it's not cast in stone,
so
So that's it.
and then again, the fact that people that is, I mean, people tend to judge people who get down with,
Yeah, cervical cancer.
cervical cancer or any
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So
Like recently, I saw a lady. She's 70-year-old, and I don't want to really give out her profile like that. But then she came down with cervical cancer. And funny enough, during the course of the history, we found out that she was raped. And that was the only sex she had in throughout her lifetime. I know someone out there will say, that's what she claimed or that's what she said. But why don't you believe her? So it happens.
okay, yeah, one last question before we go, before we even talk about medical experts, because I know I've had my own share of
Of the story. All right.
while we're talking about the risk factors,
Yeah.
I know you didn't mention anything genetics. Is there some sort of possibility that it can be inherited?
Well, I doubt because, like I told you, it's actually a sexually transmitted infection.
So whether your
So
mama
whereby
had it,
99.7% is implicated with the HPV is unlikely to be genetic.
okay.
It's not like the breast cancer that you hear that is genetic, ovarian cancer, endometrial, and stuff like that. No, this is on a different class. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. As we wrap up, I mean, this is a bit more on a general note,
Okay.
right? It might be for some sort of cancer screening. It might be for any health issues.
Yeah.
Because I know most times you go to the health facility and you tell them you want to screen for this. Sometimes you see the approach is not always very appealing from some of your colleagues or some other person. Yes, sorry. I mean, I have to put it that way. But that's where you get it very harsh. Because I remember when a friend of mine actually did her pap smear, and then the story she told me, I'm like, no, I'm not going back to that. I won't go to that facility to do mine. But then again, this somehow would scare other people up, or some sort of fear from going on with it.
Yeah.
So, just comment on that a little bit on how services can be better to help people open up to getting counseled or even getting screened.
Yeah. Maybe if I got you right, maybe the counseling was not done before then, or possibly the personnel were harsh. The people there were harsh to her and stuff like that. Well, I keep telling people, medical personnel, they are first humans, right, before being doctors and nurses. But at the same time, it's actually unprofessional to be harsh to your clients.
So someone needs help.
No matter what, yes. But sometimes the stress in the country is something else. That some people may even take their emotional, status from the house and the country and pour it on their patients, which is not nice. So I'll still encourage our medical personnel to be nice.
To be better.
Nice, to be better.
All right. I mean, thank you so much, Dr. Neka. It's been quite an eye-opening session. And just one last word to the young people watching or families who are watching us now. Is cervical cancer a death sentence, so to speak?
No. Cervical cancer is not a death sentence. Like we said, the best form of treatment is prevention as much as possible. Now that we have the HPV and the NPI program, as much as possible, let's encourage our girls between 9 to 14 to get that vaccine.
And it's still ongoing?
Yes, it's ongoing.
So you can walk up to a health facility and get vaccinated?
Most health facilities, they have the HPV vaccine available.
Wow, I mean, that's another free info. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, this is we've been chatting with Dr. Neka Osigwe. She is a specialist in obstetric and gynecology at Federal Teaching Hospital over. And she's been talking to us from last week to this week. We've been talking about cervical cancer. And this week we dwell more on the vaccine and why it's important. And you've heard it from her. For 9 to 14, the free vaccine is still ongoing. So you can go to any health facility and, of course, avail yourself of this opportunity. Like you've heard, it's a life-saving opportunity. Let's not wait until you're down with a problem before you start seeking solution. And please, do it with all of the myths and the misconceptions. If you're not too sure, why not ask a professional about it rather than believe what someone in your street is saying? And I hope this will help us live healthier lives and maybe happier lives as we would want to have it. Thank you so much for watching. I am Doris Mayim Shisha. This is where we call it a day. And please follow us on YouTube channel at Afia TV Lifestyle and Culture so you don't miss out on anything after all. Thank you once again. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye.